Emil, thank you very much for your help and pushing a good button so we can go back to the Shtetls. So this is a real honor to be here among such a distinguished guest, and I'm actually architect working mostly of the Jewish exposition and old synagogues and pre-funeral houses, but today I would like to share with you my architecture and artistic practice that copes with the problems of urban emptiness and a spectral architecture of abandoned post-Jewish properties in a former Shtetls in Poland. In the following artworks and performances, I try to reinvigorate the cultural memory and preserve the architectural substance by intervening in urban processes and negotiating with the current inhabitants of post-Jewish spaces. Such interventions need to overcome the general neglect of post-Jewish properties related to such factors as lack of historical awareness, restitution of the private property, lack of coherent heritage policy, including tourism policy, not only by Polish authorities in my case, but also by Jewish organizations. First, I shall provide the main context of my work, present very briefly, because you are aware the definition of the Shtetl. Accordingly, I will outline my main research problematic and the methods that I employ. In Yiddish, Shtetl, like Shtetl, means a small town. The term connotates a settlement with the large, compact Jewish population, which is different from the neighboring peasant population in religion, occupation, and also culture, and for me, what is the most important, architecture. From the 19th century, Ashkenazi Jews made up the majority of inhabitants in the Shtetls, often far exceeding the 50% threshold of town's population and sharing space with the other ethnic groups. Which is very important, the Shtetl originated in the first lands of the first Polish-Lithuania Commonwealth, where the nobility, having become powerful by the mid-16th century, invited Jews to settle on their estates and stimulate economic development. Over the time, Shtetl became common for any small town in Central Eastern Europe which has a sizable Jewish population. These included towns in what are now Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, Hungary, Romania, and Russia. And this is my kind of wishful thinking map. Maybe there was like designing 5 years ago, there was every place that I would like to visit where there's an interesting synagogue or mikvah, but yeah, I guess, the time to my retirement. And one of the most important sources which I use to get a glimpse into the former urban reality of Shtetls are memory books from Itzkor book, Kehilot Pinkas, mind maps of the Shtetl drawn after the Second World War by Holocaust survivors. Quite frequently, there are only one remembering documents that describe the former layouts, function, and location of the buildings, and they are very, very crucial into my kind of alternative works. And this is a small collection of the Pinkas from Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw. Since the end of the Second World War, no major research has been conducted into the transformation of functions of the processes of architectural redevelopment of the relic buildings and urban voids left by extinguished Jewish population. After 1945, the former Jewish towns became occupied by the new population, a process which created a specific set of the social, urban, and also architectural problems. One of the most important, actually, points, I would say, in the practical part of the design research for my thesis, especially the two projects, the Art and Nomadic Archive, I would like to bring into play the following question and thematic vectors. But for today, I would like to focus on the first one, conjunction and blocking of memory and the oblivion in the small towns. In other words, how to restore the Jewish legacy of a former Shtetl. How can architectural memory and its conversion into something new change certain elements of the quality of the contemporary life? And I think also the last one, connecting reconstruction of the past with the planning the future. The first practical response to both mentioned question is the yard. The yard is a nomadic platform for urban protest for me, consisting of the experimental intervention into the problems of post-Jewish property in Poland. As we know, yard means hand, is the name taken from the Judaic tradition, where serves as a liturgical tool, a root at the end of the miniature representation of the hand. Yad, in my performance piece, is a nomadic machine, shaped as a big hand with a pointing finger and covered in mirrors. That is prompts a feeling of architectural protest. So today I brought for you my first model, actually after finissage in a Sala Docks in Venice. It was this alternative biennale, and please you can take a look. It was hard to bring this big one, but yeah. So the utilization of mirrors in the installation was aimed as an optical reflection for resulting urban erosion. Yad was transported to those particular location and was used as a vehicle called urban emergency, trying to grasp public attention through its form, sound, light effects, and also artificial smoke screen. So this is actually Yad in an old Rudka Laskier house. The installation was set up in various places in Silesian metropolis, Będzin, Bytom, and as well Sosnowiec. In those towns, I select the location that before Second World War were closely related to Jewish community, like mikvahs, synagogues, and as well hospitals, and currently are neglected or sold own. So that was a very important trip for me because we prepared like a very long public walk, and then I start my coalition with Brama Zuckermana, very, very important NGO in Poland. And Yad is also exhibited now in many galleries and here in Venice, but what is the most important is in the public domain. So if you like to use Yad into your own works, so you are welcome to use it. My next step was a kind of small and tiny project called Nomadic Shtetl Archive Part 1. I do not have time now to talk about it, but very briefly, that was a performance in an old town in Częstochowa when I was collecting from the local audience, people archiving materials about Jewish district, and also I was sharing my materials founded in a Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw. So together and through the conversation with the local audience in Częstochowa, I found and as well I documented the sukkah, and we found few places for mezuzah in the door frames. So after this, that I was sending very quickly to Jewish Historical Institute, and this was kind of alternative form of the how to grow the collection of the places that sometimes nobody was aware before. So because the performance generated such a lot of different and interesting result, my plan was to expand the concept through Nomadic Shtetl Archive 2, and then apply it into other towns in order to explore the post-Jewish architectural legacy. Actually, I consider nomadism to be research form, which is the most important for my studies, provides most promising result. One of the main aim for me was to liberate and make public the archives of Jewish Historical Institute in Polish and Polish Academy of Science, and as well like a private archives. In the Derrida essay, Archive Fever, the Freudian Impression, we can find very inspiring quote: "There is no political power without control the archive, it's not memory. Effective democratization can always be measured by this essential criterion, participation, and the access to the archive. There is no archive without a place of consignation, without the technique of repetition, and without a certain ex-territory. No archive without outside." Project Nomadic Shtetl Archive, this is my continuation in a PhD project in the Bartlett School of Architecture, UCA. I realized the design and construction with my collective, Senna Collective, and the project will never happen without help from like Foundation Grodzka Gate, Zuckermana Gate, Panorama Kultur, and as well Polin Museum and Taube Foundation or Bartlett School of Architecture. The Nomadic Archive is a piece of mobile architecture which traveled in the southeastern Europe, following footprints of the former Jewish towns, exploring the layers of urban memory. During our trip, some of the inhabitants call it like mobile synagogue or the Jewish shop. So, the design. there is like our budget was not so big, so I was designing with my colleague Sebastian Kucharuk. There are some pictures for you, although there is no red and pink here, but you can imagine. The nomadic archive was built on the mobile trailer. Walls and the roof are constructed from wood and covered with plastic mirrors. Would be kind of dangerous to use other mirrors. And I designed adjustable folding doors, which also serve as exhibition walls, on which Pinkas map and the other documents were presented. So you can see what was the kind of shape. The main, this unit is equipped also with independent light system. So this is like from the interior and electricity. Centrally located light box, which featured the architecture drawings of synagogues, shelves and other furniture. At the main entry, above the couple of stairs, I hang the kind of parochet, I call it. So it was a collage with the synagogal inspiration. The main aim using the murals was to disappear, merge with the landscape, and emphasize the importance of what was exhibited inside with change each shtetl. The archive contains a small library with archival materials, and that's why I was showing it a few minutes ago this Pinkas Itzkor book, because also I was sharing with the local audience with those very important materials. In the front of the archive, we carried out discussion, workshop, and of course, what was very important for me, public walks. So this is the map with our trip, and yeah, but I will coming back to this. So inhabitants were not only passively absorbing the documents, but played role of the active co-researchers, and they help us to find the new materials, fill in archival gaps, locate the original buildings or sites from the archival photographs. The conversation in its city were very different, but a couple of topics stayed the same, like problems with privatization, lack of a social knowledge about the history of their own town, local anti-Semitism, pogroms in the 20s and the 30s, and I will quote capitalist revitalization from the 90s, which I think is also important. The consecutive public program looks quite similar, so vivid talks and 2-3 hours public walk. So our first trip, trip of Invisible Archive began in Kotsk, where in 1939 more than 49% of the population were Jews. So this is also the front of the archive and how the people react to the archival materials. Here you can see the Menachem Mendel Morgenstern house, also called Rabinówka. So in each shtetl we try to find like at least 10 places surrounding where we try to provide these walks and the tour. Next day we reached Behava. Before the war, 66% of the Jewish population. In the early afternoon, during the conversation about localization of the mikvah, somebody brought to me documents of the Jewish pupil found of the attic of one of the Behava houses during the renovation. So, and there was also one of the walk that we tried to compare the picture from the 20s and also the current shape of the building. In the afternoon, we went on the trip, during which we compared archival pictures and current shape, what I said. Thanks to the Antoni Wieczorkiewicz, the private owner of the synagogue in Behava from 19th century, we had the chance to explore the interior, where it's still possible to spot traces of polychrome with the motifs of featuring music instruments and description in Hebrew. Synagogue was sold to Mr. Wieczorkiewicz in 2007 by the Foundation for the Preservation of Jewish Heritage in Poland. In spite of the many questions about the future of the synagogue, Wieczorkiewicz did not give any concrete answer. That was at least like a year ago, but we know he was planning also to change the shape of the historical windows, but I'm very happy because of the Emil Majuk, he's here with us, probably the revitalization will go in a good way. And one of the local rumors said a year ago that will be exclusive restaurants with the Jewish style. The next day, we spent a day and a night in the Behava. The people like the people are actually, they are very proud of the new investment in Biłgoraj. It's called Settlement of the Root of the Borderline Culture, which is inspired of the hybrid architectural structure. It's a significant site of identification with the Jewish architectural heritage in Biłgoraj. During our discussions, we had a few, that will become clear that inhabitants consider this settlement as an opportunity to preserve Jewish memory in Biłgoraj and to have a chance to establish vivid cultural life. My ethical and, of course, aesthetic opinion of the investment is more ambivalent. It's a gated community, private estate in a folkloristic style with a hotel, restaurants, parking lot, market square, and Orthodox church and mill, and as well spectacular reconstruction of the wooden synagogue from Wopa, not from Biłgoraj, from Wopa. So I think all trip in a Biłgoraj was also very crucial, and I would say more critical than in the other cities. Tyszowce. It's important to keep in mind that during the Second World War, almost 60% of the town was demolished. At the evening, we spent actually one of the most amazing trip with the local historian, Robert Herbaczewski. And here you can see how the nomadic archive is melting into the environment. So it's kind of disappear in a public sphere, and that was exactly my goal, to provide this design that would be not oppressive to the local audience. And there was this public program in the front of archive, some video, that was provided by Monika Tarajko. And then, of course, the young people, they have not really much knowledge about their own small shtetl, Tyszowce. And I also brought my hurdy-gurdy, this kind of invisible box, and sometimes it was hard to interact with in a Jewish cemetery. That's why I took with me this invisible box. I think I have not really much time, so I pick up the last three. Szczebrzeszyn, why is important? The city is very famous for the late Renaissance synagogue, which serves currently as like a culture house, which permits ambitious program devoted to the Jewish culture. Unfortunately, the Jewish cemetery, which is in the custody of Foundation for Preservation of Jewish Heritage, was overgrown with weeds, and we were not able to enter. But you can see that was before the same public program and the walk, and we found during the afternoon, we went on the walk searching for the Kuczkas, and in the junction of Targowa and Zwierzyniecka Street, we found the trace of mezuzot, so it was a very quick sent to the Jewish Historical Institute. Day after, Józefów won our hearts with a great revitalization of the synagogue turned in the local library. Our attention also was drawn beautifully picturesque and well-kept cemetery on the Kamienna Street, and this is very important to say. This property is also of the Foundation for the Preservation of Jewish Heritage in Poland, but also is very well kept. So it's a very actually good example. So the situation is quite puzzled. I spent the majority of the time walking and talking with, for example, Mr. Apollonius, recording his thoughts about local pogroms in the 30s, and also violent activities of anti-communist, nationalist, partisans, żołnierze wyklęci. And also one of my two favorite pictures, Invisible Archive, and how the weather played very important role. Yeah, that's supposed to be very red, but yeah. On the 3rd of August last year, we came to Kraśnik together with Mariusz Bieniek. We went to see Grand Synagogue, also under custody of Foundation for Preservation of Jewish Heritage in Poland. On the local, we saw very beautiful local Beit Hamidrash and the synagogue. Both of those impressive buildings are unfortunately closed to visitors on a regular basis, so I mean for a local audience. For some of the local inhabitants, they came for my walk. That was the first opportunity to ever see these buildings. We were astonished by the wall painting portrait of tables of law with animal motifs and view of Jerusalem. So that was also our walk. And and my new friends from Krasnik. We went to the last trip on the nomadic Shtetl archive in the very late autumn, exposed to rain. We went to Wojsławice, a very small village, also typical wooden archive buildings, typical Shtetl. This town sustains memory of the Jewish neighbors. On the house, you can see here the Favka, the Kolber house, and is located now the Association of Panorama of Cultures. Emil is also here with us. For the first time, the archive visit was announced by the local priest during the Sunday Mass. So the audience, you can see, was kind of, it was a lot of people. On this amazing discussion and conversation that Mrs. Grażyna said, like, I'm living in a Jewish house. So it was the first kind of interaction. And here you can see the synagogue in Wojsławice. What is very important for me, together with Senna Collective, my two colleagues and Agata, we will support the local council in renovating the synagogue as a cultural facility. So you can see that nomadic archive is kind of working. It was a public lecture. So in project as Nomadic Shtetl Archive and the art, I tried to cope with the situation where the memory of post-Jewish property has become overlaid by numerous subsequent transformation, whether imposed by the state, such as turning synagogues into public libraries, or inducted by the private enterprise, such as transformation synagogues into the restaurants. This picture, I think, is also quite crucial because police stopped us here and they said, like, do you know that you are invisible? And we tried to convince the policeman that we have like an archive from the Jewish Historical Institute, so we pay nothing, and they support us in the next small town. But please join me in the next year. We are planning also with my colleagues to have a trip, and I strongly believe that such of interventions, even that I am like architect, as I said, gives me much more like I think energy and also knowledge what is happening in the small towns. And I think we should remember about them and not exclude from our research. Thank you very much.